My name isn't important, but at the time I was only 15 years old. I lived in a small beach town in the United States where the streets were packed with tourists every summer. But as soon as the season ended, the entire town became eerily quiet. Boarded up shops, an empty boardwalk, and the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore. That was my world. I liked going for runs at night because the daytime heat was almost unbearable. So that evening, just like always, I was jogging alone along the deserted boardwalk. The only sound was my running shoes pounding against the wooden planks. Then I heard it, a faint metallic clink, as if something made of metal had just fallen. I immediately checked my pockets. My heart sank. My house keys were gone. I leaned over and tried to look through the gaps in the boardwalk, but all I could see was darkness. The keys had my home address attached to them. Leaving them there wasn't an option. With no other choice, I climbed down beneath the boardwalk onto the damp sand. The air was thick with the smell of rotting seaweed, wet wood, and stale beer. The only light I had came from the faint backlight of my watch, barely enough to illuminate a few feet in front of me. I dropped to my knees and began brushing away the sand, searching for my keys, but they were nowhere to be found. Then, I had the unmistakable feeling that someone was silently watching me from the darkness. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination. After searching through the sand for several more minutes without finding my keys, I climbed back onto the boardwalk. Maybe I had been looking in the wrong spot. Then I came up with a simple idea. I untied one of my shoelaces and lowered it through a crack between the wooden planks so I could easily find the exact spot when I climbed back underneath. But the moment I stood up, I felt a sudden, powerful tug on the lace. Before I could react, it was ripped from my fingers and disappeared into the darkness below. I froze. The air was completely still. There wasn't even a breeze. That wasn't the wind. Something underneath the boardwalk had grabbed my shoelace and pulled it away. I stood there frozen for several seconds. Every instinct told me to run home. But then I remembered my keys. If whoever was hiding down there had found them, they would also have my home address. That thought forced me to gather my courage. I climbed beneath the boardwalk one more time. This time, every step felt heavier than the last. The faint glow from my watch swept across the wooden support beams and the scattered trash beneath them. Then, I heard it, the slow sound of footsteps moving across the sand somewhere ahead of me. I froze. A second later, I heard the same sound to my left, then to my right. That's when the terrifying realization hit me. There wasn't just one person hiding beneath the boardwalk. There were several. A wave of terror rushed through my entire body. I knew staying there any longer would be the biggest mistake I could make. Slowly, I began backing away, doing everything I could to avoid making a sound. Then, a quiet laugh echoed from the darkness to my right. My mouth went completely dry. I pointed the dim light from my watch toward the sound. There was nothing there, only weathered wooden pilings and deep, endless shadows. Then, all at once, I heard fast footsteps pounding across the sand behind me. That was it. I turned and sprinted toward the exit as fast as I could. I was only a few feet away from climbing back onto the boardwalk when suddenly an ice-cold hand clamped tightly around my ankle. A scream tore out of my throat before I could stop it. The grip of that icy hand was so strong that it yanked me straight onto the sand. Sharp fingernails dug deep into my skin, and the pain nearly took my breath away. Without thinking, I kicked backward with all the strength I had. My foot slammed into something solid. The grip suddenly loosened. That was all the chance I needed. I scrambled forward on my hands and knees, clawing my way toward the edge of the boardwalk. Then I pulled myself up onto the wooden planks and took off running. I didn't dare look back, not even once. My heart was pounding so hard that I could hear it echoing in my ears. I ran all the way home without stopping, certain that something from the darkness was chasing me. I made it home and started pounding on the front door with everything I had. A few seconds later, my dad threw the door open. The moment he saw me gasping for air, covered in wet sand, with blood running down my ankle, the color drained from his face. At first, he thought I had gotten into a fight. But after I told my parents everything that had happened beneath the boardwalk, the entire mood inside the house changed. My mom looked at the deep fingernail marks on my ankle and immediately called the police. That same night, we decided to replace every lock on the house. The next morning, a locksmith installed brand new locks on every door. For a while, I thought it was over. I couldn't have been more wrong. The real nightmare was only just beginning. 3 days after the incident, someone began pounding on our front door early one morning. My dad had already left for work, and my mom was upstairs. I slowly walked downstairs and looked through the peephole. No one was there. After waiting a few moments, I carefully cracked the door open. The entire street was empty. Then my eyes dropped to something lying on the front doorstep. My heart nearly stopped. It was my shoelace, the very same one that had been pulled out of my hand beneath the boardwalk. My hand started shaking. The meaning was unmistakable. Whatever had been hiding under that boardwalk had found our house. I slammed the door shut and called for my mom. That was the first day our entire family truly realized the nightmare hadn't stayed at the beach. That evening, my dad didn't waste any time. He had security cameras and a home alarm system installed throughout the house. For the next several weeks, every little sound made us jump. As soon as night fell, every window was locked and the outdoor lights stayed on until sunrise. I couldn't even bring myself to go outside alone anymore. But the strangest part was this. The security cameras never captured anyone. No one ever approached the front door. No one walked past the windows. Nothing. And yet, on many nights, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was standing outside, watching us. Sometimes, when the wind drifted in from the ocean, I caught the same foul smell of rotting seaweed and damp wood that I had smelled beneath the boardwalk that night. And every time it happened, the fear came rushing back. We were just about to leave when something caught my eye. One of the old wooden support posts beneath the boardwalk was covered with tiny scratches, carved by something sharp. I stepped closer. They weren't random marks. They were dates, dozens of them. And at the very bottom, there was one that looked fresh. It matched the exact date my keys had fallen through the boardwalk. Next to it, only one word had been carved: found. A chill shot through my entire body. I immediately called my dad over, but by the time he reached me, he couldn't see the word at all. As the angle of the sunlight shifted, the wooden post looked completely ordinary. No carving, no message, nothing. I didn't say another word, but deep down, I knew what I had seen wasn't my imagination. Years have passed since that night. I don't live in that beach town anymore, but my family still owns our old beach house. Whenever I go back for a vacation, I always make sure I'm home before sunset. I have never found the courage to run along that boardwalk after dark again. The most unsettling part is that the police never found my keys, and no one could ever explain the deep fingernail marks that were left on my ankle that night. Sometimes I wonder, If I hadn't broken free from that icy grip, I probably wouldn't be alive to tell this story today. Even now, whenever I hear the sound of waves crashing against the shore, I can't help but feel that something is still waiting beneath that old boardwalk, patiently waiting for the next person to make the same mistake. Waves, beach house, moonlight, terror. Years have passed since that night. I don't live in that beach town anymore, but my family still owns our old beach house. Whenever I go back for a vacation, I always make sure I'm home before sunset. I have never found the courage to run along that boardwalk after dark again. The most unsettling part is that the police never found my keys, and no one could ever explain the deep fingernail marks that were left on my ankle that night. Sometimes I wonder, if I hadn't broken free from that icy grip, I probably wouldn't be alive to tell this story today. Even now, whenever I hear the sound of waves crashing against the shore, I can't help but feel that something is still waiting beneath that old boardwalk, patiently waiting for the next person to make the same mistake. Waves, beach house, moonlight, terror.
If you enjoyed this terrifying journey, subscribe to Mr. Nightmare 2.0 and become part of our growing horror community. Sweet dreams, if you can sleep.